Welcome back to Movie Summary. Today we are diving into a film called Brazen. The movie begins with a person on a computer. He goes to a dirty video website, log in and clicks on a live video. Woman is on her bed moving around. She asks her viewers for requests and execute as they wish. She calls herself Desiree and a few minutes later she signs off. Once all cameras are turned off, she removes her wig, goes back to Kathleen, which is her real name. She steps out of that room, which is hidden in her closet, and she locks in. We then jump into a woman making a speech, her name Grace. She is an author and is talking to her fans. Her new book Brazen talks about a woman living a double life. Her speech finishes and the crowd cheers her up. She then receives a call from Kathleen, her sister. She wants to see her ASAP and she jumps on the first flight to get there. As soon as she arrives, she realizes Kathleen seems nervous. Kathleen welcomes her inside and keeps stalling. So Grace asks her the question, "Why am I here?" She adds that the last time she heard from her she was addicted to pills and walked out on her own son. Kathleen clarifies she had no choice. When she divorced, her husband wouldn't let her live with her son Kevin. She adds that she doesn't take any pills anymore and has a job, she is a teacher. But the big thing is that this time she decides to fight for the custody of Kevin. Kathleen is ready to give it all as tears come out. Later that night, a man is getting coffee at a bodega. His name is Ed. Out of nowhere, a man comes with a gun to rob the cashier. He looks at Ed and also wants his wallet. Ed executes and reaches into his pocket to put the wallet on the counter. But he makes it fall on purpose, and when the robber goes to pick it up he attacks him. Both men fight. During the fight an older gentleman walks in and all he wants is the coffee he sent Ed to buy. His name is Ben. He is a detective. Minutes later, both men walk out with their coffees in hands while police officers are putting the robber away. Meanwhile, at Kathleen's house, she asks Grace for her approval to get the mortgage on her half. Grace wonders if it will be enough, but she assures her sister that she is working on other things. Grace of course wonders what are those other things. But she says she has proofs that Jonathan, her husband, is stealing money for a trust fund. Grace is shocked and thinks it's blackmail, but Kathleen tells her, "You are not so pure. You make money about right on woman getting murdered." That offends Grace and she decides to go to sleep. Moments later, Kathleen is in tears and Grace comes back. She is so afraid of losing her son. She truly didn't expect Grace to show up for help. But as the great sister she is, Grace joins Kathleen in bed and comfort her. Meanwhile, a mysterious man is looking at Kathleen's profile Desiree and is engaging in some sort of hacking. He finds her real name and address. He gets truly excited visualizing in his mind all the great lives he saw from her. He then searches the house on Google Map. Kathleen has no idea what is coming. The next day, Grace hears some noises while trying to work on her book. She gets irritated and looks over the window, seeing the neighbor Ed doing some carpentering around. He promises he is almost done. She then decides to pay him a visit. She thinks his house is the best on the block. She even brought him some coffee. But when Ed hears her name, he goes inside to grab one of her books, while she Googled him realizing he is a detective. She congratulated him on the headlines, but for him it's just part of the job. When she hears that it is his week off, she tells him she wants to spend time with him, maybe figure out a fictional murder case for her next book. Days later, Kathleen is at her regular job, a teacher. As soon as she finishes, a student by the name of Gerald wants to talk to her, but Grace calls her so he leaves. Grace wants to borrow some of Kathleen's clothes for her date with Ed. Grace then realizes the secret door in her closet, the one that leads to her secret life of Desiree online. She asks Kathleen about it, but she tells her she will explain it to her later. As she hangs up, someone is looking at her from far. At home, she finally FaceTime with her lovely son, but Jonathan interrupts the call and hangs up. She then gets another call. She says tonight is not good, but it seems she hasn't a choice here. So she goes into her secret room in the closet. She takes a gun out and closes the door. Meanwhile, Grace is enjoying herself with Ed. Especially that he is a detective, so they go through all possible scenarios during a police investigation of a murder. After the dinner, he brings her to his house. They continue their playful imagination of investigation. While doing so, they get closer and touchy. Meanwhile, Desiree is doing her usual live. Someone with a mask approaches the house and looks inside. He tries to enter but realizes the door is locked. At this moment, Grace and Ed come out and they both kiss as they are falling for each other. Right after, each one go back to their own home. But when Grace gets home, she finds Kathleen unconscious on the ground. She panics and screams outside. Ed comes to the rescue. He comes in and also sees Kathleen's body. He informs Grace that she is dead. Moments later, police is called. They find the secret room. At the station, Ed asks Ben to work this case because he knows Grace and it's her sister. She is then called for questioning. And Ed asks her as she knew about her sister's clients. But Grace has no idea, as for her, Kathleen was only a teacher. Ed then reveals to her that Kathleen was connecting to clients via webcam. This is too much to handle for Grace. She asks to stay at Ed's house tonight. The next day, Grace is determined to help find the killer, but Ed refuses her involvement. She goes to the house and the press is already outside waiting for her. Once inside, Grace starts examining the circumstances of her sister's death. Her inner self comes out as she built her whole career on writing novels about woman murder mystery. Ed doesn't think it's a good idea and thinks she should go. Grace pushes him to tell her the details of her death. And Ed reveals he came by the back door, smashed the glass door to open it. He hasn't stolen anything, so he was really after her. Grace remembers she had marks on her neck, but Ed doesn't know yet what was used for it. He continues by adding they know she ran the shower but never got in. We are also shown the events of that night. The intruder took Kathleen by surprise and started going on her, dragging her to the living room and killing her. Later that day, Ed and Ben go visit the company Kathleen was working for. They tell them her character Desiree was becoming really popular. They also state that no private information is ever shown outside of the three owners. After the meeting, Ben seems to have a lot on his mind about Grace getting so close to Ed. Days later, the principal of the school Kathleen was working at welcomes Grace and is sorry for her loss. She leaves her in the class her sister used to teach. A group of students walk in and are also expressing their condolences. Billy, a worker at the school, brings all Kathleen's stuff they had in the school. If you remember, Billy was the one weird man starring at her days ago. Once she steps out, Gerald reveals that he saw Kathleen and Billy argue. So Grace goes to confront Billy, who says the reason they were arguing was because he found out she was Desiree through his cousin. Grace immediately shares this info with Ed and the detective team arrives at Billy's house. Now the movie is about to go into an intense ride as the search for the killer will intensify and take an unexpected turn. Don't miss the resolution of this crazy case as part 2 attached here. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other movie summaries we have on our channel.